Okay, so what you're seeing is my desktop is split into two browser windows, the teacher view and the student view. And I'm going to try to show you how I want you to give a Nearpod when it's only you receiving the Nearpod, but you'll kind of get the idea of how to administer a Nearpod as a teacher. So what I'm going to do is over here, the teacher view, I'm going to log in using my Google integrated login, just like we learned in week one. You can see that it's kind of a smushed window here. I'm going to open it up just a wee bit here. You can see that I'm at my library, and we might as well go ahead and use this African elephants lesson that we've been working with, and we're gonna do a live lesson. Okay, I've got all these active codes, but I'm going to launch a new live session, and Nearpod's going to generate that code, and I have to communicate the code to my students. I'm just going to copy paste it. You might write it on the board. We talked about that later. Okay. Now, before I log my students in, let's take a look at the teacher dashboard here that we're looking at, okay? So here's the actual slide that's active. And up here is if you need to get that code back, you put it on the board, but somebody erased it, or somebody walks in late and you didn't write it on the board, you just said it out loud. There's the code. Here's a place where you can either access your reports, which I can show you how to do later, or you can actually end this session. Class is over, see you later, end session. Over here, if you've got a really great discussion going in your class and you're like, oh, I wish I would have put a collaborate board right here in these slides, or I wish I would have put a quiz in, you can add an activity on the fly right in the middle of the lesson. Woohoo! This button here is if you want your screen to look like the student's screen. When might you do this? Well, somebody might do this. I actually don't use this feature, but somebody might do this if they're broadcasting this screen, their teacher screen, up on their whiteboard, which I don't like to do because I don't like kids to see the back end. You can hide students' names if you want to do that, but I don't use my whiteboard, my projector with Nearpod, because the students have the screen in front of them. If we're sitting in a circle and we're having a discussion about this topic, I don't want them looking at the whiteboard. I want them looking at each other, looking at me, and looking at their screen. So I don't use this student view. There might be other ways of using it, but I just don't use it. I'm going to hide my Screencastify tools here. Right here, this is how you know who's in your lesson, what students have joined. A little pro tip here, the students' names turn green when they're with you and involved in the lesson. They'll turn red if they're not quite engaged, or they've gone off onto a different browser tab. You can see that and say, oh, I have a red student, and click on it and say, hey, Eddie, are you listening to me? So that's what that little button does. Okay, now the most important buttons. This one and this one advance slides to students in a linear fashion. Like, oh, I need to get my students to the next slide. I'm going to hit that button. And you do that, and that changes the students. And you'll see as soon as we log in as a student, changes the student's view. So you can linear go through these slides forward or backward. Now, to be honest with you, I don't use those buttons. I use the scrubber bar. Scrubber bar is down here. This tells me that we're on slide 2 of 30. If I go back one, it's the student, it's the sign-in page for the students. But the scrubber bar has this little arrow right here. This is the button I use because I like to control which slide I give them. Do I want to give them that one? Yep. And that shares it that way. So get in the habit of using the scrubber bar, and you can say, you know what? I don't have time to talk about this one today, so I'm just going to skip that one, and I'm just going to go a little bit forward. I'm going to go right to the quiz, or I'm going to go right to the discussion part. You can actually kind of on the fly choose exactly what slide you push out to your students. Okay, I'm going to pause my video because I'm going to log in my students. I'm going to put my code in and log my students in.